relates specifically to the authoritarian regime in Beijing, which we believe, does not represent the hopes, aspirations of the Chinese people.
Representative Mike Gallagher would chair the new committee. In an opinion piece, he listed the major challenges the panel will look at. The first is the push to end America's economic dependencies on China. The U.S. imported a quarter of its antibiotics from China in 2021. It also relies on China for rare earth minerals, which are critical for making weapons. The committee also aims to prevent U.S. pension funds from investing in China. Controversy has come up that some of the pension funds have gone to aid China's military modernization. That's through investing in certain Chinese companies listed in the U.S. The committee would also make it a priority to aid Taiwan and to expose Beijing's lobbying efforts at U.S. government agencies. New agreements are happening on the international stage. Japan's prime minister is meeting with several heads of state this week, touring the capital cities of several groups of 7 member nations. The Indo-Pacific region is among the key topics on the table. Zoom in.
On Wednesday, Japan's Fumio Kishida paid Britain a visit. At the Tower of London Fortress, he and UK leader Rishi Sunak signed a defense deal that could lead to troop deployments in each other's territory. British lawmakers said the agreement cements their commitment to the Indo-Pacific region. It will allow both militaries to plan and deliver larger and more complex military exercises and deployments. The two countries are strengthening ties amid fears of Chinese aggression, especially the looming threat of an invasion of Taiwan. On Tuesday, Kishida met with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. They agreed to strengthen ties in a range of areas, including the economy, trade, and defense. A day before his meeting with Italy, Kishida joined French President Emmanuel Macron on a tour of the Notre Dame Cathedral's construction site. France is looking to develop its presence in the Indo-Pacific and has been keen to deepen economic ties with Japan.
Cette action commune de la France et du Japon dans les
This joint action by France and Japan in multilateral forums is based on a solid bilateral relationship, compatible with building partnerships in the most strategic sectors, for example, in the civilian nuclear power sector, critical metals, space, defense, automotive sectors.
Discussion also involved France's desire to play a bigger role in Japan's defense industry.
qui mérite la plus grande vigilance.
Japan can count on our unwavering support in the face of flagrant violations of international law by Pyongyang.
As part of Kishida's week-long tour, he'll next visit Canada and the U.S. for a White House meeting with President Biden on Friday. Japan will host a G7 summit in May.
From the German parliament Tuesday. Among them was the head of the German Parliamentary Defense Committee. She said Germany has been generous in sending weapons to Ukraine, but noted the situation is different in Taiwan.
And the question is not, please, Germany, send us weapons. The questions are totally different. It's, please look forward if you are in a trade to China. It's not a question of military equipment.
Most countries refrain from selling weapons to Taiwan. That's for fear of angering Beijing and prompting a trade backlash. On the other side of the strait, China renewed its threat to attack the island. A spokesman sent out a warning to foreign politicians who interact with Taipei, describing their actions as, quote, playing with fire. To counter Beijing's pressure, Taiwan's military is holding a 2-day joint exercise this week. China has never ruled the democratically governed island, but Beijing considers Taiwan its own territory and has vowed to bring the island under its control by force if necessary. The regime sends aircraft and warships to Taiwan on an almost daily basis. Late in December, China sent a record 71 aircraft and 7 ships to Taiwan. This is the largest such exercise in 2022. A Chinese warship reaching deep into the South Pacific. What does the sighting say about Beijing's military capability and its global ambitions? NTD spoke to Captain James Fannell, former director of intelligence for the U.S. Pacific Fleet, about what's happening. NTD's Juliet Song has more on that.
In the blue waters of the South Pacific, the French military spotted a Chinese warship. This warship appeared near French Polynesia on December 22nd last year, a group of islands in the South Pacific Ocean. A week later, the French military again snapped photos of a Chinese warship, this time near New Caledonia, a French territory in the southwest Pacific, over 700 miles east of Australia. It's unclear if it's the same warship that emerged earlier. Captain James Fennell is the former director of intelligence and information operations for the U.S. Pacific Fleet. He said having this warship out in the South Pacific demonstrates how China is pushing its military modernization forward.
That the PLA leadership feels confident that their platforms are able to transit long distances.
What's unusual about this warship is that at the time it was spotted, it was over 6,000 miles away from its home base. That's beyond the range a missile destroyer of this scale could sustain, without a refueling ship following behind.
Their ships have the capacity to transit these long distances, and I think that's something that also Americans should understand, is that we hear conflicting reports from so-called experts who talk about the inferiority of PLA Navy warships and that they don't have long range, and that's actually not true.
But Fennell said there's another possibility.
Their diplomatic efforts in establishing relations and improved relations with a number of nations in the South Pacific has enabled them to be able to transit out there without an oiler that would go with them to ensure that they always had fuel.
For example, the president of the Philippines visited Chinese leader Xi Jinping last week. The two countries published a joint statement pledging to boost cooperation.
So it's entirely possible that there was a port call by a Chinese warship in somewhere in the Philippines. And as I mentioned previously, it's possible also that they could have stopped somewhere else along the way. Vanuatu, Kiribati, probably not Kiribati because they don't have a lot of resources there, but the Solomons is also one.
Beijing has been competing for clout in the South Pacific. Several countries there have cut off diplomatic relations with Taiwan and recognized Beijing instead. The Solomon Islands is one of them. The same day the French military saw the Chinese warship near New Caledonia, a Chinese aircraft carrier group edged close to Guam. That's according to Beijing's official mouthpiece, Global Times. The island of Guam is a U.S. territory and the site of a major military base. It's home to Air Force and naval facilities. It's also a critical hub for submarine communications cables between the western U.S., Hawaii, Australia, and Asia.
So I think what we're seeing now is these are indicators of the PLA Navy resuming its pursuit and its strategic trend line of becoming a global naval force.
He noted that having a global naval force is critical for Beijing's global economic outreach.
Having a big navy that can be able to ensure that their ability to transport goods and services across the oceans of the world, to extend this Belt and Road Initiative that extends China's economic power to assure that they have access to these resources, is the main goal.
Fennell said the U.S. needs to recognize the threat of a rising Chinese military. For decades, Washington has adopted a policy of engagement.
But that's a failure to understand the Chinese Communist Party and their desire to be the dominant global power. And so what the United States needs to do is to wake up and recognize that China's activities, while this is a single destroyer transiting, doesn't represent a significant military threat, unchecked and unprepared or unresponded to in 20 years from now or even sooner will present a great challenge to the United States' ability to ensure that our way of life and the freedom and liberty that we have can be continued. And China wants to upset that.
He added, the U.S. used to be more balanced in its land and naval powers.
But now, over the last 30 years with the Gulf Wars, we have lost this focus on naval power.
He said now America needs to return to that in order to be able to deter Beijing's further aggression and be able to fight and win a war at sea. Juliet Song, NTD News.
Coming up, China claims to have achieved an important step toward quantum computing. But how far have they really gotten?
It's like if you were to claim that you are now on the way to the moon because you were able to fire a rocket in your backyard that went over the fence and landed in your neighbor's yard, right? It's absurd. Of course, you're not going to the moon that way, but you're on the path.
The development still marks a win for Beijing. Tiffany Meyer spoke to Arthur Herman, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute and director at the Quantum Alliance Initiative.
Insecure location. So, he didn't seem to be as outraged over his own wrongdoing.
House Republicans could also launch investigations into Hunter Biden's business dealings, big tech, and even the oranges.
Of classified documents found in his former Washington office, reports indicate his legal team has discovered more in a second location. The revelation comes days after an attorney for the president said Biden's lawyers had discovered a small number of classified documents at the former Penn Biden Center, where he kept an office after leaving the vice presidency in 2017 until 2019. The Department of Justice is reviewing that case. As for the new documents, they were found at his home in Wilmington, Delaware. A special counsel to the president said a small number of documents with classified markings were found in a storage space in Biden's garage. On the third day of their ongoing strike, 7,000 nurses will return to work after tentatively reaching a deal on a new contract to increase pay and improve staffing. The nurses reached agreements with two hospitals, Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx and Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan. While pay increases were part of what the nurses were asking for, the main issue is with staffing. One nurse said that she and her coworkers have been caring for twice the number of patients than what is considered safe. The deal
3 hours.
So we're supposed to board at 7:35 Vegas time. We did not board until 10:35.
The system that provides safety information to pilots crashed.
It's a very complicated system because it's so large.
The FAA traced the outage to a damaged database file in the Notice to Air Mission System, or NOTAM. It alerts pilots to potential problems.
NOTAM is a electronic delivery of written notices from airports primarily to pilots of hazards. A taxiway is closed. There's bad weather coming. The president's coming.
Pilots and dispatchers must complete a mandatory checklist to make sure the route is safe before a flight takes off.
They could close a runway and a pilot could try to land on it. They could put up a tower or a crane for construction and a pilot not be aware of it and could hit it.
The glitch began Tuesday night. It cascaded into Wednesday. That forced airlines to delay and cancel thousands of flights for hours nationwide. Did this put any flights in danger?
Unlikely. Once you're in the air, you've typically already checked everything, and you should be fine for the landing.
Now, the Biden administration says there's no indication of a cyber attack. All this on the heels of that air travel fiasco a few weeks ago, and the FAA says it's working to make sure these types of disruptions don't happen again. We're live at Hartsfield Jackson. Christopher King, Fox 5 News.
Christopher, thanks.
From a holy place.
The leaders of the church believe whoever's responsible spent some time. They ransacked this sanctuary here, but they also went through kicking in doors, this one to the trustee ministry.
The house of God is the last place you would think that crime would occur.
It's still hard for Reverend Tracy Fletcher to process after someone broke into First St. Peter AME Church in DeKalb County earlier this week and got away with over $10,000 worth of equipment.
They broke in, threw a rock, pulled it up, and stepped in.
Fletcher took us on a tour of the damage at the church on South Indian Creek Drive, as they believe the burglars hit sometime Sunday night or Monday.
I came around the corner, and I saw that back door completely standing open. TV's gone.
They believe the thieves came in through the basement, and this spiritual leader doesn't believe the attack was random, as those responsible went floor to floor, stealing everything from TVs to sound systems to lights and even items for the homeless.
We have all these homeless packages here, and they have money in them, right? They went through and just threw stuff everywhere. They had kicked out the bottom of this door when in this office, it just makes me feel like we're going 20 steps forward. But this incident appears to have taken us back 40 steps.
Fletcher says the church has been in the area for nearly a quarter of a century and a hub for community events.
You have to be pretty much at a very low place to steal from a church.
As they work to figure out just how they will find the money to replace the material items, the thieves couldn't steal their joy and praise.
What the devil meant for evil, watch God turn it around for a blessing.
And if you know anything that could help in this case, come forward to DeKalb County Police. Of course, you can remain anonymous. In DeKalb County, I'm Eric Perry, Fox 5 News.
The tax is now back in effect, meaning about 30 cents is tacked onto each gallon. Georgia's average is $2.88 a gallon, a 7-cent jump from yesterday.
It's Hoops Night in Georgia. We're started over at State Farm Arena where the Hawks hosted the Milwaukee Bucks. Trae Young out with the illness, and Clint Capella also not in the lineup due to a calf strain. Now, the Bucks scored 39 first-quarter points and held a 21-point halftime lead. But the Hawks would storm back in the second half to tie the game on this John Collins transition basket with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Then Bogey, he gives the Hawks their first lead of the game, 103-102. But, oh, man, the Bucks went on a 10-0 run and eventually won it behind the clutch shooting of Drew Holiday. Hawks lose this one, final score 114-105. Now, the news is much better over from the Stegosaurus in Athens. Georgia shot under 30% from the field, yet somehow they found a way to win this one against Mississippi State, 58-50. Now, Terry Roberts once again had a good night leading the Dogs with 16 points, and he was a perfect 6 for 6 from the free throw line. Georgia moves to 12-4 overall and 2-1, more importantly, in conference play. They'll travel to Ole Miss on Saturday.
Country School in Rockmart to the first of many thunderous rounds of applause. A bright spot, his mother says, in an agonizing year since they learned of his cancer.
It's very hard to wrap your head around a diagnosis like that. And he is a very strong-willed child.
Justin got to meet Captain America, but like many fourth-grade boys, what he really wants is to be just like his dad.
He's always wanted to be in the military ever since he was about 6 years old.
And Justin got his wish, thanks to the 283rd Air National Guard Communication Squadron his father Scott used to be part of at Dobbins.
And you're talking about a family of people that is dedicated to see you succeed in all facets of life.
Justin took the oath as a command chief and received his certificate. They even had a uniform prepared for him that was just his size. And there was more. Justin promptly received a promotion from the Assistant Adjutant General of the Georgia Air National Guard.
Of the 15,001 that are in the Georgia National Guard, there are 3 generals. Today, there are 4.
General Clenard led his classmates down the long hallway to the playing fields, where they enjoyed a flyover from a helicopter from Dobbins. Justin beamed with pride and appreciation, and so did his older brother Jordan.
I never would have expected every single student in this whole school to get together just for him. I understand why, though, because he is loving, he's caring. Doesn't matter who it is or where they come from.
He loves playing with our dogs. He's just your average 10-year-old. Just taking in every moment of every day.
This day had many moments to savor.
Thank you so much for being such an awesome community. Seeing people share his story and what he's facing.
Amy Clenard says the spark for today's celebration dates back to last summer when her husband asked a friend in the 283rd whether they could bring Justin by for a tour. The family is beyond grateful it became so much more than that.
And a day there sort of never.
That we have, I'm just reading from the article, a full understanding of expenses, state institutions. Let me stop right there for a second. What if every state did this? What if every state went to the universities and said, let's have some accountability on some of the money or these crazy causes. Can you imagine?
It's the first story of 2023, David, and you have high hopes for this 2023. We could call it.
This is our first show back. Give us a break. This letter is a request for information from the Department of Education and State University System regarding the expenditure of state resources on programs and initiatives related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and critical race theory within our state colleges and universities. So, Katie, this is something that more people are saying, go governor, go governor.
Go governor.
When things like this, and that's one of the many things people like about DeSantis. Even some Democrats are saying, yeah, I guess we should have maybe a little accountability.
And that's precisely the point. How can you, as a constituent within the state or just as a citizen of this country, not be like, yeah, within my own state, I think it would be good if we followed the money and knew what was happening at the university level because they're receiving funding from me and you, the taxpayer. And this should be happening, obviously, with our public school system as well. And there are parents who
let's not go that far.
Let's not go to the K-12 system. But there are parents hopefully waking up. I think 2022, and this is my prediction here as we move forward, 2022 parents started to pay attention. 2023, they are going to at least be more, they're going to push forward more with the higher ups, not just speaking out in front of the school board, but they are going to put a lot more pressure on those who make the actual decisions, like a Ron DeSantis. Ron, he's taken actual initiative in holding these universities accountable. He didn't need the parents to do that. He's actually what we would call a leader. So he actually, yes, I know, I understand.
What does that word mean again?
Leader.
So we also have a video on this too, don't we?
Oh, yes. So let's watch that.
Yeah.
We rank #1 in education freedom, and we rank #1 in parental involvement in education. Florida also ranks #1 in public higher education. This is a record we can all be proud of.
Now, that's awesome for Florida, and lucky you if you live in Florida. But the sad truth is, it shouldn't be that easy for them to get #1. But because everyone is so bad, they get to be #1 in everything, if that makes sense. Because all it takes is for one man like Ron DeSantis to open his eyes and be like, hey, legislature, hey, local school boards, hey, universities, hey, all of it. Do your job. Yeah. And he's actually putting a little pressure on them.
Yeah, I think
that's all it takes.
Unfortunately, many states are going to start demanding they grade on a curve.
Yes.
Florida's #1.
So we're going
to... Where's our award?
Where's our award? Come on, we participated.
Where's our participation trophy?
We want our participation.
Anyway, for each initiative, university administrators were told to include a brief description of the program. Oh, now they actually have to describe what the heck they're doing.
But here's the thing. Before you start listing off all of them, my point that I want everyone to listen to is a brief description of the program or activity. So you said it in a way that they may have not heard, but it's a brief description. Like, it should be so like, yeah, that's easy to do. Why aren't we already doing it? Okay, so continue on.
All right. Also, the number of staff positions associated with the program. Stop right there. Why would they have to do that? Because they just hire all these different, people. Let's be involved. Let's just grow this.
74 people.
Let's balloon this.
What? 74 people?
These positions. Oh gosh, with these programs. Next, the total funding used to support the program, and the portion of the funding that came from taxpayer dollars. Yes, thank you to a shout out to Common Sense, Katie.
And that's the one that people.
Been a Russian target since May. An offensive came as Poland announced plans to send battle tanks to Ukraine, which followed announcements from the U.S. and France that they too plan to send over more equipment. The Pentagon further announced on Tuesday the U.S. will soon begin training Ukrainian soldiers in Oklahoma. Back in the U.S. now, Washington is preparing to welcome the Japanese Prime Minister for a visit with President Biden on Friday, as the two nations plan to boost military and security cooperation. The U.S. and Japanese foreign and defense ministers announced an agreement to adjust the American troop presence on the island of Okinawa. Japan's defense ministry announced it was ready to start construction on an uninhabited island where the two militaries will hold joint military exercises. The two nations are revising their joint defense posture as they confront rising threats from North Korea and increasing aggressiveness from China. Taking a quick trip across the pond before we go, London Zoo welcomed its first 2023 arrival as a baby two-toed sloth was born on New Year's Day. The zookeepers dubbed the baby Nova, or new in Latin. They don't know the baby's sex yet, but Nova and its mother have been mostly tucked away while Nova discovers a new world. But the zoo has now put the mother and her baby out on display for visitors.
Their lives. 11 ambush fatalities. These were lives lost due to a calculated advantage, a premeditated act. The number 2 cause of firearm fatalities is domestic disputes.
States with the largest number of law enforcement officer fatalities from this report shows Texas with 33 line-of-duty deaths. New York coming in at second with 12 officer fatalities.
We have to look at the importance of funding our officer safety and wellness programs. From the federal level to state to local, that's what's bringing the numbers down. Because the more we can train and equip our law enforcement with best practices, the best equipment, we will be saving lives.
There are currently over 23,000 names of officers killed in the line of duty inscribed on the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. And sadly, more will be added. Reporting for Newsnet, I'm Tolly Anderson.
Network TV this year, but the ratings look to be pretty underwhelming. And the Screen Actors Guild Awards smile on 2 comedy legends. Here is your Hollywood report.
Legendary guitar player Jeff Beck has died. Beck, whose career began in the 1960s, is probably best known for his work with the Yardbirds. He also gained popularity with the Jeff Beck Group. His representative confirmed he died Tuesday after suddenly contracting bacterial meningitis. Beck was 78. My boy. Woo! Yeah. It's looking like the ratings for Tuesday's Golden Globes deserve a Golden Razzie. The Fast affiliate ratings from Nielsen, time period based and only approximate, show the event averaged an estimated 5.36 million viewers. Forbes reports the Golden Globes peaked in 2004 based on Nielsen ratings with 26.8 million viewers. Of course, viewing habits have changed, and there is more competition now as opposed to the mid-2000s, but still, the numbers add up to the return of the award show being safe to label as a flop.
It's very rare for a true crime podcast to do a sequel. A real opportunity here.
And speaking of award shows, the nominations for the 29th Screen Actor Guild Awards have been announced, and the outstanding performance by a male actor in a comedy series has 2 people from the same show. Both Steve Martin and Martin Short are nominated this year for their work in the comedy series Only Murders in the Building. Another item of note here is that the ceremony will no longer air on TBS and TNT, but instead will stream on Netflix's YouTube channel on February 26th. Now, Only Murders in the Building can be seen on Hulu. It also features singer Selena Gomez. And that's your Hollywood Report. I'm Frank McCaffrey.
And coming up, we'll have national headlines. Then a bit later is weather and
can lead to survival mode, where you gossip about others to make you feel better about yourself. Experts say it's a vicious cycle that can eventually make you sick.
Your immune system starts attacking your own tissues. Your metabolism or fuel consumption starts taking fuel from your tendons and ligaments and cartilage, actually your brain.
Gossiping can also bring on exhaustion, anxiety, or depression. So how do you break the cycle? Simply stopping negativity in your conversations can have a dramatic impact on how your body reacts. In fact, positive gossip, like sharing news about someone's accomplishments, can temporarily boost our own self-esteem and may help us all feel more emotionally supported by others.